Hello, my name is Kathleen Flynn from the law offices at Kathleen M. Flynn in Decatur, Georgia. We assist children and adults in obtaining SSI and SSDI benefits, widows and widowers benefits, child insurance benefits, and adult disabled child benefits. We also assist veterans with service-connected veterans benefits. Today I'll be discussing the return of in-person hearings at the Social Security hearing office called the Office of Hearings and Operations, OHO for short. Many of us have been wondering when the return of in-person hearings will occur since the pandemic started at the end of March 2020. In the middle of January 2022, the Judges Union came to an agreement with the Social Security Administration, and those judges who are part of the union on a volunteer basis would return to in-person hearings in May of 2022. Our office has not had any in-person hearings scheduled for May of 2022. It's now the end of March, and come June 2022, except those judges with medical exemptions, all judges will be required to hold in-person hearings. So if you currently have a video or phone hearing scheduled and you want to convert it to an in-person hearing, the judge would have to approve this. And if an attorney wants to combine an in-person hearing with a remote hearing on the same day, the judge would have to approve this. Also, 75-day notice is required, and both the judge and the client must waive the 75-day notice for the hearing to be held earlier. This can be a problem as we've had some hearings scheduled by the scheduling unit that's outside the hearing office, and they were scheduled with less than 75-day notice. And the client was willing to waive the notice, and the judge canceled the hearing saying that he required written notice. He could have either put it later in the day or asked us to submit the written notice before the close of the business day and gone on the record and had the client consent. The Social Security Administration's internal regulations require written waiver of notice of 75 days. If you're at the hearing office in person, they just give the claimant a piece of paper to sign, and then it's handed to the judge or faxed into the electronic file. Obviously, if you're doing video or phone hearings, that convenience doesn't occur, although it could be faxed right after the hearing as well to the judge. But staff has been concerned at the hearing office that it might not be received timely or incorporated in the electronic file if it's faxed. Anyway, be aware that your office receives 75-day notice because you don't want the hearing canceled if it was scheduled less than 75 days in advance, unless you're at an in-person hearing. So how do you convert your your video or phone hearing to an in-person hearing? The judge would have to agree to that if it's already scheduled by phone or video, and it might result in long delays, so I wouldn't recommend that. We've been holding hearings ever since the pandemic started by phone. I know some other attorneys didn't want to do that because there are advantages to having in-person hearings. For example, if your client has bad side effects and his or her hands shake, you would want the judge to see that. If that occurs from mental health medication, for example. If someone, ambulates with much difficulty, you would want the judge to see that. But that's weighed against the efficacy of having hearings in a more timely manner, and we leave that up to the client as to what they want to do. So if you do want your hearing converted to an in-person hearing, we would gladly notify the hearing office of that, and then the judge would either consent to have the hearing the same day or would have it rescheduled. So in order to enter the hearing office, everyone has to complete complete a questionnaire and wear a mask. The judge is given a face shield, and that's optional for the judge to wear the face shield. My understanding is there'll be some sort of barrier between the judge and the attorney and the client sitting at the table before the judge. That might be plexiglass. I'm not sure where the vocational expert will be seated. Maybe the vocational expert won't be in the hearing room and will be testifying by telephone. I guess once we have our first hearing, we'll get a better idea. But as far as the questionnaire, I just received a notification from the Social Security Administration as to what's going to be required to enter a Social Security office, and I'm assuming this includes the hearing office. And this is dated March 30th, today, 2022. So all visitors, employees, and guards must review the self-assessment questionnaire and answer the questions. If your answer to any of these questions is yes, regardless of your vaccination status, you may not enter the office. Masks, again, are required for everyone, including the security guards. Do you have any new or worsening symptoms of COVID-19, including fever, 100.4 degrees or higher, cough or sore throat, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle aches or body aches, new loss of taste or smell, congestion or runny nose, or nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea? If your answer is yes to that question, any of those symptoms, you may not enter the hearing office. And within the last 10 days, have you been diagnosed with COVID-19, received instructions from a public health authority to self-monitor for symptoms of COVID-19, or self-quarantine due to COVID-19? If your answer is yes, you may not enter the hearing office. Have you been tested for COVID-19 and are awaiting the results other than for travel purposes? If the answer is yes, you cannot enter the hearing office. Been in close physical contact with anyone who's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or developed symptoms consistent with COVID-19? If your answer to that question is yes, you cannot enter the hearing office. Or within the last 5 days, have you traveled outside the country by means other than land travel, I guess by car or bus, such as, they say car, bus, ferry, or train? If your answer is yes, in other words, if you traveled by plane, you may not, within the last 5 days, you may not enter the hearing office. And close physical contact is defined as within 6 feet of an infected or symptomatic person for 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period from 48 hours before illness onset. So you might want to consider whether or not you want to schedule an in-person hearing, because by the time your hearing comes up, you might have fit one of these categories. Obviously, if you're traveling by plane, you would know, hopefully far in advance of the hearing, that you would be traveling at a certain date and it wouldn't conflict. It says within 5 days of the hearing date. However, anything can happen between now and the hearing date, with variants infecting people and now significant lockdowns in China due to a new variant. So you might want to think twice about an in-person hearing. But that's up to you. I mean, I'm open to in-person hearings, I'm open to video hearings, or I'm open to phone hearings. The problem is a lot of our clients don't have sophisticated phones for the video hearings, and you are welcome to come into our office and do the hearing in our office with one of us, although we did have a judge who would not allow us to be in the same room as the client with the testimony taken by phone. I guess maybe he was concerned about notes being shared back and forth. So you might want to consider that as well if you want to come into the office. So I'm just explaining some of your options and how these changes will occur with in-person hearings. We all look forward to a return to normalcy. If you have any further questions, please call us at 404-479-4431. I also want to add that we have opted out of video hearings when clients are in Atlanta because we want local judges, or if a client, moves to another hearing office, we may ask for an in-person hearing, depending on our availability and depending on what the client wants. However, once we opt in for in-person hearings, it's sometimes difficult to change to a video hearing. We had that happen in North Carolina, where our schedule didn't permit us to travel 7 hours, and the client agreed that we could do a video hearing, but the judge wouldn't allow it because we had originally opted out of video hearings. But the reason why we opted out of it was because we wanted an in-person local judge. So if you request a video hearing, you may get a judge out of state, you may get a judge from the Chicago hearing office where they do a lot of video hearings, and you may not get the local judge. So keep that in mind too when you're requesting video hearings. All right, as I said, if you have any additional questions, just call us at 404-479-4431. Visit our website at KathleenFlynnLaw.com. We're going to have a slide at the end of this video with our contact information. We appreciate you listening to this. We hope it was informative, and stay tuned for future videos covering how to prepare for your hearing or addressing particular conditions, like we did a lupus video for those with this condition, so they know what Social Security is looking for. We also will be doing veteran service-connected video hearings. So enjoy your evening, and thank you again for watching this. Bye-bye.